Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my podcast or my YouTube channel. I'm Will Caminada, the multidimensional guide and Pleiadian channel, and I'm here to help you awaken, heal, and expand your consciousness. This is a conversation episode, and I had the absolute pleasure to talk to Kim Chestney. And Kim is the author of the book, The Illumination Code, Radical Intuition, and Psychic Workshop. As the founder of IntuitionLab and the Create Festival, her work raises awareness about the importance of insight in the evolution of individual and world consciousness. Working for nearly 20 years in the tech sector, Chestney has led initiatives with some of the top thought leaders, technology companies, and universities in the world. So in this conversation, we talked a lot about her new book, The Illumination Code, the 7 keys to unlock your quantum intelligence. So we started talking about the quantum field and what is the quantum intelligence, but then we dove deep into remote viewing and past lives and alternate realities and parallel lives, and intuition, because she is the master of intuition. So I hope and I feel like you're going to love this conversation and get lots of insights and lots of downloads. So if you enjoy the show and you benefit from this show, I'd love for you to share this episode with that one friend who you know will benefit from it too, and leave a comment on how this interview resonates with you. And thank you so much. Enjoy the show. Hello, Kim. So nice to meet you and have you on the show.
Yes. So thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Will.
Oh, thank you for being here. And I'm excited to talk to you about your book, um, The Illumination Code. I've read a few things and I'm really excited to dig deep into it. Just before we get to that, I love to ask my guests a little bit about their background and maybe spiritual awakening. So I'd love to know from you. I know it might be a big story to share, but maybe like a snapshot of your background and how you got to where you are today, being this author, this spiritual guide.
Yeah, and that is really an important conversation to have, especially when we're talking about the things we're going to be talking about today, because our journeys are usually so counterintuitive, and mine is no exception. You don't expect to ever come to this place in life, but our intuition sort of leads us to where we need to be. So, for me, I as a young person, I really developed a curiosity for I don't know, the paranormal, the psychic element of life, the mysteries. I'm a Scorpio, so it was in my blood. I think that I've always been fascinated with intuition and really the mystery that was on the other side of it. So, as a child, I grew up in a haunted house, so that really kicked things off. I saw some things happen that that the world told me was supposed to be impossible. And when that kind of thing happens, especially as a young age, you're like, well, it was very real to me, and I actually experienced that. So I'm going to keep investigating. So that sort of lit a fire within me, I think, from a very young age to really understand the deeper dimension of life and life's curiosities and mysteries, and my own intuitive sort of senses and the things that happened to me over the course of growing up. It really culminated in my 20s when I had my real spiritual awakening, and some things happened spiritually that I could no longer deny or kind of put in the background. And I think that's something that's common to a lot of people when we wake up and we're like, okay, like I have to face this is a reality of life in the world, and now what do I do with that? So in my upcoming book, my current book, The Illumination Code, that was really, I really actually sort of tell my stories a little bit for the first time in this book. I'm not all of them, but it's taken me a while to really get in that place and be open and honest, because as you know, I'm sure, like talking about the stuff that people are like, oh, that's crazy, that's out there. But when you really start to understand intuition as a natural quantum function, as a part of life, leading us to the answers behind life's mysteries, then that things don't seem so crazy anymore. Suddenly things fall into place and we can all have conversations that are actually meaningful and relate to, the real world that we're living in.
Yeah, yeah. It's like coming out of the spiritual closet, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then you're on the
Exactly.
other side and you're like, why didn't I do this earlier? Right?
Exactly. It's like, oh, such a relief.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I have this quote from you, from your book, that I really love that I wanted to read to the viewers and the listeners. You say, this moment is an invitation to embrace a new understanding of reality, to step across a threshold into the unknown. It is a call to expand your mind and fulfill your greater potential as a human being. I love
Mm,
that so much.
mm, mm.
And then I have two questions about this. One is, was that your, I feel like this was maybe the main intention behind this book.
Absolutely.
And what is this greater potential for the human being that you envision in your heart?
I really appreciate you reading that passage because I think that really was one of the core passages in the book that really does summarize what the energy and purpose of writing it and sharing it is. And that really is to connect us to the magic and joy and wonder of being human. We live in a world where we're sort of desensitized to the material world because, we're just like, oh, this is what a room's like. This is what our jobs are like. This is what we're supposed to do every day of our life. But we sort of go blind to the fact that we live in a world that we barely understand, and there's magic and mystery and wonder everywhere. And our intuition is really one of the keys to help us personally experience that, to remind us of that, and recognize it and fuse our lives with it. So, for me, this invitation is an invitation to really open up to the deep dimension of ourselves, that part of ourselves that we're encouraged not to look into because it's sort of outside the circle, right? It's one of those things that society is sort of programmed out of us. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Um, in my mind, the main reason is because it's so powerful and because there's so many of those answers there for us that really can liberate us and allow us to see the truth and live our authentic selves. So we have to overcome a lot of societal conditioning to get into this space and do this work and really to know who we are. Like, isn't that the biggest questions? Like, who are we? What are we? Why are we here? Right? And we can't find those answers by, just looking all together in the world around us, the knowledge systems that we've been brought up in. I mean, there's, to a degree, we can learn from those teachers, but the true teacher, the final teacher, is the teacher within us. And there's a doorway that will take us deep into the mystery if we're brave enough to step through it.
Yes, yes, I love that. And I'll pick on something you said, the deep dimensions within us, or the inner dimensions. And I talk a lot about that in my work, about multidimensionalities. And also, I feel like more from a microcosm perspective,
Yes.
like it's within us more than something outside of us. And so hearing you saying like the deep dimension within us, that we are the teachers, it's really like powerful,
Mhm.
because it can really awaken and activate that power that we have as human beings. And I think to the reality aspect too that you mentioned is something that we're all undoing, like learning, but it's really like undoing and
Yeah.
remembering there isn't just one reality, right? There are so many other realities, and we can tap into the realities that we envision, that we want for ourselves. And you talk a little bit about alternate realities. Can we? I wanted to go there later, but can we go there now?
We're gonna dive right into the good stuff. Yeah, let's do it. We're not messing around here.
Uh, what is your perspective on the alternate realities, or even I don't know how you describe it, if it's timelines or alternate realities. What is your take on that? I'm very curious.
All right, well, here we go. Buckle up. I'm
Buckle
just
up.
gonna just unleash it all. Tell me if I'm saying too many words.
Go for
So,
it.
and this really is the gist, the overarching gist of, the foundation of what I'm working with the Illumination Code is understanding the world, right? As really having, as we're all participating, not just in this reality, but this deep dimension that is within us, around us, interpenetrated with us. So if we understand life in the big picture, right, we understand that everything we experience is relative. So just the concept of time. Yes, we can understand there's something before us and something after us because we're simply an individual point of consciousness, which makes us relative, right? So we know, science, as I'm sure you and your listeners know, science has shown that really time is an illusion. There really is no such thing as time. Everything that's ever happened will happen, is happening now. All of it is happening in the eternal now. So understanding that there really is a part of us, call it your higher self, call it your deep dimension, your God self, whatever word that you want to use for that part of yourself that is connected to your intuition. It is the part of you that knows everything, your all-knowing self. And we all have that as our guiding force within us, right? So our minds are sort of, really on the other end of sort of a reduction valve. We don't, our brains are designed to process that much information of everything that's out there, right? So, because people are always like, well, if part of us knows everything, why don't we just know everything? It's just, we aren't biologically designed to know everything, but our intuition can go in and pull little bits and pieces out. So what that means, with all of this stuff happening, we have to talk about the existence of the non-local field, which is this quantum field that connects all things and where is really the cosmic memory of the universe, right? Like the Akashic record, it holds the information of every event that will happen, ever happen, right? So this creates this sort of everythingness, the all at once everythingness that is interpenetrated with us informationally on a microcosmic level through this quantum field that we actually know through science exists. So this isn't so woo-woo anymore, right? In the old days, 200 years ago, we called it supernatural, we called it occult, just because there was no understanding of quantum physics back then. We didn't understand the microcosmic world, so we had to put a label on it that was something that basically we just didn't understand. Now we're getting an idea. Scientists like Erwin Laszlo, Jude Currivan are really out there exploring this interdimension and finding scientific proof of it. So where this all weaves into alternate realities and the multiverse and all of that is when you start to realize that there is, while there's this everythingness, we still live in with free will. It's not that everything's predestined. It's not like, oh, there's just this one path for me ahead. We have the ability to choose and manifest and co-create. And this creates an infinitude of other realities that are also populating all of this universe around us. So it gets to be this sort of mind expanding, mind blowing concept that, again, I think our brains can't fully process at this point. I guess we start to evolve and grow and our minds expand, we're going to start using more of this brain and we'll be able to do that. But so there are these sort of simultaneous alternate realities, alternate worlds of ourself, parallel dimensions, interdimensional life. And we can kind of drill down into some of those if you want to talk about specific things. But I think it's really important that when we have this kind of awakening in our life to really start to explore these different elements of being that are beyond the veil of the material world, because we know the material world's just an illusion and there's just so much more life on the other side of it.
Yeah, yeah, love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Like I said, I can talk about this for hours.
Amazing, amazing. Um, I want to ask you about the quantum field because you were mentioning that, and I was thinking about, for me, the way I see it is there's this infinite amount. There's no amount because it's infinite, but
Right.
infinite probabilities, right? When we're talking about these timelines that we can jump into. And yeah, I want to pick on something that you said about the free will, right? Because this is a free will zone. This universe is a free will zone. And I see this very often with clients. They have different questions to I channel the Pleiadians, and they have different questions, but at the core of it, most of the time is, why don't I know everything if I hold everything in me? Or how can I know everything? How can I know the future? And the answer is usually timelines aren't fixed and you have the free will.
Mhm.
But I understand where they're coming from because I have the same questions, right? Um,
Absolutely.
how can one, so I'm going to ask this because I feel like some of the viewers might be thinking this. How can we then, if there's this field of infinite probabilities, alternate realities, how can we tap into the one that is for our highest good for our evolution?
Great question. And that's really at the heart of a lot of the work that and the experiments and the practices that I do in my school intuition lab. So we do a lot of practices tapping into the non-local field, trying to work with folks, investigating past lives, investigating the future, all these different things that we're not supposed to be able to do. So I think how this works to begin with, it comes down to that wonderful idea in science of entanglement, right? So we've all heard of quantum entanglement and the two particles that can communicate, even though they're on opposite sides of the universe, even if they were together once, they're entangled. So this idea that we entangle with people, places, things through our energy, through our thoughts and our feelings, not only applies to this reality, like for instance, if you think of a friend and then they call you on the phone like a minute later, right? That's a little example of entanglement. But when your dog sits in front of the door and is waiting for you to get home 10 minutes before you arrive every day, there's a part of him that knows you're on your way home. There's nothing rational. It's just entanglement. It's not he's figuring it out. It's just a natural a connection that you have. So that also works, from my experience and in terms of interdimensionally, in terms of different times, in terms of different spaces, remote viewing, past lives. And, one of the things, particularly talking about, well, other lives, right? Because we don't necessarily know that they're past because there's no such thing as time. So I'm trying to find the right language to talk about them, but, we think of them as past lives from our point of view. But something like that, it's very much still based on entanglement. Like what we found through these, we do past life masterminds where we just had one this week where we've had multiple people coming through with describing the same life for the same person over and over again. And it's fascinating how to see this happen with people that barely know each other and like couldn't, have no way of predicting these specific things. But what happens, I think, is that things that we're still entangled with in this life, right? So maybe trauma we're still getting over, or just places that we might still feel entangled with location-wise. That entanglement still allows us to tap into that non-local information in the quantum field. So if it's something that you're still emotionally connected with, mentally connected with it, that's where your intuition is going to go first. So, right, if you want to think about the future, you want to get into that sort of space of knowing what's ahead. Well, the first question is to ask yourself, well, what am I consciously, subconsciously still entangled with? That's the direction your intuition is going to go first, right? Because it's going to go with what it knows before it like jumps into like, something. It's not going to go read somebody else's down the streets future because your intuition's not entangled with it, right? So I think the idea of entanglement is what keeps all of that information of the universe personal to us. It's stuff that's still alive within us, stuff we're still connected to, past and future. So really getting into a good high vibe space is really important. I'm sure you found that in your work too, as you want to get open and clear, get your, you can tell when your intuition's not flowing, if you had like kind of a bad day or if you're tired or not sick, like it's hard to get that energy connected. But when you sort of get into that good place, that clear place, open that channel, and let that stuff flow, it's going to flow through the things that are resonating on the same vibrational frequency of love and light and all the good things, right? Because if you want those good things, you have to track those good things energetically and sort of align with them resonantly. And then recognizing that your intentions and your entanglements will guide the place that that energy goes.
Yeah, I love that intention and entanglement, because it can be a little maybe overwhelming for some of us to think of this field that holds so much information. And so what you're saying, the way I interpret it is, when you are aligned with your personal intentions and you are in your energy field, everything that you're entangled with will come to you. And it's almost like you're opening up the library of your energy field and your soul's wisdom, more than just scattered in the cosmos, right?
Absolutely, because you create a resonance with your soul's expansion, right? Because we're all expanding with the universe. We're meant to expand our minds, our hearts, grow with the universe, know more, understand more. And when we are in that sort of high vibration state of love and light and loving kindness, really, because that's what's on the other side of everything. We live in this world of division and conflict, and this is like a world on fire half the time where we are here. But when we transcend that, we come together and we get back to that unity and we follow our intuition. What's on the other side of that is that feeling of loving connection with each other. Love is the coherence of the universe. It's what holds us together, right? It's not just peace and love and rock and roll. It's actually a scientific thing. It's coherence. It's what it brings all the different things in the world together as one. And when we align with that energy, we align with our own best path, our own highest evolution and expansion.
Yes, amazing. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about something you mentioned, past lives and remote viewing too. I know they're different things, kind of connected, but different things. Can anyone remote view, and maybe just a little background of what it is for anybody who's never
Yeah, I love remote viewing. And I remember there was a time I was really intimidated by it. I was like, oh, I could never do that, right? So I think that's a very common conception around people. How could I ever know what something looks like in another place in space and time where I'm not, right? So the idea with remote viewing is that if you tune in, you can see or describe different places anywhere through intention and through your intuitive experience. And it sounds like it should be impossible, right? Because how could anybody do that? But then what we realized that with intuition, the non-local field, quantum mechanics, it's 100% possible. People do it all the time and everybody can do it. And guess what? It's the easiest thing of all the intuition stuff that I teach. Remote viewing is the easiest thing. Like almost 100% of the students can do it. And I would have thought it was the other way around, right? Because I teach people to trust themselves and live their truth, and that's way harder than remote viewing. Let me tell you, remote viewing is really simple, and you get great validation. So it became popular. It became called remote viewing back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. The United States government in particular has a great story about that with Project Stargate. If you haven't heard that, Google that. There's been movies made around it. It's a fantastic story of back during the Cold War, people were all, even like Russia and different global powers were using psychic spies. So America wanted to keep up with that. So we launched Project Stargate with the DIA and Stanford University at the time. They got together this great group of actually everyday people, artists, some soldiers, just regular, not even like psychics or anything, to try remote viewing. And it turned out that it was working. And there's a lot of stories about, missions that were successful based on this, but it ended up being a 20-year project. It went on for 20 years and they spent upwards of $20 million on this remote viewing project. So that tells you something. It's working. They would never have kept doing that if it wasn't. And then eventually it actually got shut down, I think, because Jimmy Carter accidentally talked about it. It was supposed to be top secret, so they had to shut it down, you know what I mean? So it could still be going on for all we know. But the idea is that, really any person, given the right training and understanding of their intuition, can tune into different places and describe them. You've heard of psychics doing this with like lost people, like even in crime scenes, situations like that. It's very helpful in a lot of ways. So now, I started teaching remote viewing as one of my courses at IntuitionLab, and I've been doing that for several years. So it's as simple as just doing a simple exercise and having someone describe my house. And you would be amazed. You might not see like some people do see the entire house as it looks, but other people will just talk about like very specific objects in the house, and they will describe the layout of the house, or things that like big, like there was a lake and a dam near my house that someone picked up on. So everyone's unique. So, right, everyone's intuition is unique, and they'll pick up on different things. So that's one of the beautiful things about intuition. It's not like, oh, you got the wrong answer. No, everyone gets something different. So it's so exciting to see this kind of thing happen. And to me, it's just become such an everyday thing that I realize it's just so easy. I'm not even I'm validated by it, but I'm not even amazed by it anymore, because I see this happening all the time, that we have this ability to intuitively read the data, the codes, the illumination code that guides us from this quantum field and gives us this information.
Yeah. And is that a version of time travel too? Can somebody remote view from the future or the past, or a past lifetime?
Oh my gosh, yes. And so that's one thing that's really exciting. Yes, we can look around things in Earth right now. And the good thing is when we practice, in this time and space that we're in, we can get those validations that say, oh yeah, that was right. But it's not limited to this time and space. So when you think about people like Nostradamus or the prophets of the Bible, a lot of that is remote viewing the future. That's really what prophecy is, right? You see these visions of the future. Well, you're remote viewing a path in future, right? Not the path, right? When you're seeing it, it's the most probable path, because that's what you're entangled with. But things can happen that change that as time moves on. You can also, and that's when you do past lives, it's very much remote viewing the past, right? You're looking back through that lens and experiencing that information that's stored, like the Akashic record, all of the data. We understand now this whole model of computers really has changed our conception of things. So think about it. Like when I was growing up, there was no such thing as a computer. We didn't understand the cloud. We didn't understand like hard drives, stuff like that. So when you talked about something like the Akashic records, it was just this haul of compendium of books, right? Because that was the closest storage device, a book, that we could have for information. But in reality, when we understand the idea of ones and zeros of a code embedding really experiences like the videos we're watching now, all of this, look at how much information is here. That's all boiled down to this very small, tiny code that's informing us as we sit here. So we understand this is what's happening on a certain level with the universe. All of the information is stored of everything we do, think, say, feel throughout our lives, through everyone's lives. It's recorded and stored. So our intuition has the ability to read that code and decode it into this moment in time.
Yeah, I love that. And what would you say are sort of the main benefits, or even like healing benefits of remote viewing and remembering past lives? And I ask because it's a very common topic that comes up in group sessions and one-on-one sessions too. And sometimes it comes through me to report to them. And I know from my experience what has helped me to remember certain things that my soul has experienced. But from your perspective, maybe personal and also like working with people, what would be the main benefits, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, the most important benefit that I've noticed in my life and with the students is really about self-discovery and self-realization. Because when you understand, especially looking at past lives, other lives sort of situations, and you understand this history of themes that your soul, that your spirit is working with, it really can help you to understand why your life is the way it is, understand the challenges you're facing in a meaningful way, help you heal, help you release, right? Understanding you might have like a lot of times these past life experience create like the sort of unconscious fears, like you can't explain if you have a phobia of water, things like that, right? And then you go and you find out, oh, in a past life I drowned. So okay, so now I can transmute that. That's where that came from. I can make peace. And I've seen these situations where people really overcome a lot of these unconscious sort of challenges that we're affected with through this kind of awareness. So I think it's a really valuable self-discovery tool for our own psyche, for our own individual personal growth as we shed the past and really move forward and live in the moment, in the present. But it's also really powerful for getting validation that there is really a meaningful, eternal nature of life. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts that we get through intuition, is understanding that this isn't it. It's not just we live and we die and it's over. When we get evidence that there is something more out there, that we live on, that there is something bigger waiting, and this is just a little tiny moment in the mosaic of whatever life ultimately is, it really gives us hope. And it gives us the ability to, like I said, reignite that magic and wonder of life. And it makes us come alive inside. And that's really, I think, the key to being happy and having passions and really feeling alive in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And also making conscious decisions, since and I'll circle back to what we were talking about, the free will, right? We are constantly every day making choices. And I think when you have that awareness, when you expand your awareness and you have the ability to make, I don't want to say better choices, but just more conscious choices, and maybe even get out of a loop or a kind of pattern that your soul has been moving through.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because we get in the ruts, we get in the loops, right? And that's one of the things when we do past life stuff, you'll see the same thing coming back. Oh, you have to keep, it's like you do it until you fix it, right? It just keeps coming back again and again. So you want to get out of that loop and transmute that sort of heavier energies and any sort of trauma, so that we can make those conscious decisions. I think you really hit the nail on the head. It's not living from that place of unconsciousness, of where we're ruled by sort of our unconscious fears or past experiences that may have sort of jaded us in a different way, but really being present, not even just making decisions consciously, making them super consciously, right? From that higher conscious place of our intuition, that the place of the highest clarity and the highest knowingness that is even beyond what we would call like conscious living in this reality.
Yeah. I want to just make sure that we go back to the title of your book. I feel like everything we've been talking is in your book, but just want to go back to make sure that we're because we kind of started at the end and now we're going to the beginning. So it's very non-linear, which is a very quantum way of doing things,
Exactly.
right?
I love that.
So the title of your upcoming book, which is going to be released on April the 4th?
Second. April 4224 is the release date, the birthday of the Illumination Code.
So probably when this video is published, it will already be available. And it's called the Illumination Code, the 7 Keys to Unlock Your Quantum Intelligence. What is maybe your definition of quantum intelligence? And maybe we've already talked about it. We've given examples of it, but what would you say is your definition of it?
Yes, we've definitely been talking about our quantum intelligence with all this fun stuff, this fun intuition stuff. So ultimately, when we accept that intuition is a quantum phenomenon, right? When we start to think with our intuition, I really love this idea of understanding intuition as our quantum intelligence. We have our everyday garden variety intelligence where it's very linear. We figure things out. We drop the apple, it falls. It's just everything is as we would expect it. But our quantum intelligence, this deep dimension of our brain, teaches us to think in a way that's completely different. And that's what people don't really understand about intuition. It's not just like some woo-woo thing, right? It's about learning to think differently. We don't actively process things with our intuition. All we do with intuition, it's like the easiest way to think of it all. We just open up and receive, right? Just like when you're talking about channeling, you just channel things. You don't think about all those things and figure it out, right? You just open up and you receive it and it flows through you. That code just drops in and flows through you and manifests in the world. So when we start to learn to think receptively, to open up, to listen, instead of always being the one out there, being in this place, creating, talking, doing, figuring it out, just slow down, be still. Let the universe speak through us. Let the universe give us those answers. And people like Einstein, Steve Jobs, geniuses, have been the greatest voice for intuition in this kind of thinking. So it really is also the hallmark of genius. So it's not like we're saying anything new here. It's just really understanding and bringing to the forefront what really, really smart people in the past have figured out. The greatest people in the world have figured this out. And now it's time for all of us to start using that in our lives to lead better lives and to propel humanity forward to the good place we want to get to.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you bring this scientific approach to it too, because it's like you said, it's very easy to understand the Newtonian science. It's from A to B, gravity, boom, right? And there's no thinking, it's just very logical. But when you move up through the dimensions and you start working with a quantum mechanics, there's a whole new world, literally like a new dimension opened up for you and so many more possibilities. And I'd love for you to share with us some of these 7 keys. I know, like, I don't want you to spoil the book, but if you could share maybe your one that you're feeling to share today here, or maybe just a quick overview of them so that people know what to expect when they read your book.
Yeah. So I got to pull them all up in front of me so that that I get them in the right order, because so the keys really come down. They came through with this whole thing because I wanted to create a journey where the everyday person could start with just what is the first thing I can do to really bring this sort of intuition into my life in a very practical way, but in a meaningful way. And then how do I go from that point to the point where I'm experiencing alternate realities, parallel universes, guiding forces, remote viewing, all of that stuff, sort of like the end destination, right? So it begins really in very simple terms of understanding, that foundational concept. So the first key is very simply what I mentioned earlier, is recognizing that a part of you knows everything. So that really is a key thing to accept in your life. Recognizing that, okay, so how do I know? Well, how does all of this mysterious stuff happen? How do I know this when there's no way that I could know it? When I pull that like little tarot card that gives me just the right insight for today, how did I know to pick that card? Well, a part of you knows where every card in that deck is, and you pick that card because a part of you knows everything. And that works inside and outside, but we'll get to that later. So with this foundational understanding of our all-knowing self being an actual real part of us, it opens up the gateway to this deep dimension and all of the magic that resides there. So this isn't just a reading book. This is a doing book. All my books are workshops. I don't want you to take it from me. I want you, like, you do this work, right? I want folks to go out there and just do it for themselves, right? You don't have to just take my word for it. When you experience it, then you'll believe it, because you can't fully really trust it until it happens to you. Yeah. So I want to create a way to open space for people to have these experiences. So each key has a workshop with it. I call them labs. because and I founded Intuition Lab with the idea that a lab is a place to experiment, research, explore, right? And that's what this book is about. It's exploring your inner dimension, your past, your future, all of the magic that makes you who you are.
Yeah, I love that. It's like taking the information in and then spending some time experimenting, integrating all of the information, not just like mentally, right? I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, once you sort of get into that headspace and we start working with some exercises to tap into that part of you that knows everything, then the key is we move into understanding concepts like meta reality and what does the real reality look like, or what is the difference between this world that we live in versus the eternal world that is beyond and within us, and this sort of beautiful amalgamation of existence. So there's some really interesting chapters about something and nothingness, and understanding that the real world's not the real world, that we think there's matter and energy, but really there's no such thing as matter, right? We know that matter is mostly empty space and energy, and and Einstein has taught us that energy and matter convert. But even on a more fundamental basis, when we keep boiling down, like what's matter made of? It's made of atoms, and what are atoms made of? Particles, and what are particles made of? And you get into the like subatomic particles and quarks and bosons, but what are all they made of? And now what's so cool is leading scientists are now realizing that deep down, the further you go and you get to the smallest place in the world isn't built of stuff and things and matter. The world is actually built of information, right? And so that's why it's so exciting. We live in a universe built of information, which is, what does our intuition do? It reads information. So your intuition is the most valuable thing in a world built of information. So we live in this beautiful sea of information, energy, light. Light carries information. We see fiber optic cords, right? Our inner light. All of that stuff.
The Pleiadians always say that information is light and light is information. So what you're saying really
Thank you.
resonates.
I appreciate that validation. So yes, right? Because that makes perfect sense, and that's also why we feel so good when we can say connect with the light, go into the light when we pass, right? Because it's more than just our inner wisdom. It's the storage facility for all of the light and love and everythingness of the world. So we want to be one with that, right? That's what we want to connect with, and ultimately
And we want to be open to receive that light, to that information. And like currently, Earth has been receiving so many of those solar flares and solar flares. So there are a lot of people talking about it. And the way I see it is information. Like we're just being bombarded with new information that we need to continue to expand and ascend.
I love that, and I think that's a really fascinating idea. I wonder if there's any way to sort of get research on that and find out if when those things happen, if there's an uptick in any certain type of awareness or revelations or epiphanies or anything like that would come with it. Because yeah, it really does kind of make you wonder, because on so many levels, light is this transmitter of wisdom and information. And of course, right, that would make sense if someone wanted to deliver information to us, that it would come on the light. Wow. So these are really fascinating ideas when we kind of bridge this sort of gap between the material world and consciousness. And so really ultimately what it's saying, right, is that light, information, all of this stuff is a type of consciousness, right? Because information builds thought, builds consciousness. So we're hearkening back to the days of Carl Jung and cosmic consciousness and quantum consciousness, and all of this stuff all sorts of falls into place when we think of things like that.
Yeah. And if we are made of that energy, then we are it, right? We are conscious,
exactly.
And we are light, and we hold this information and what we
like
think.
You say, star seeds. Yes.
Yeah. And I love what you said too, that we think there's there's matter, but like even ourselves, like we're not really as dense as we think we are. Like we're much more space than matter,
Yes.
much more water even
Yes.
than flesh.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We don't even really can't even grasp it, right? Again, this is just stuff we become acclimated to. We're just acclimated. This is skin and that's a television and all of that stuff, right? But when you really think of it, what is it really, right? It's so cool when you take the time to really unpack that.
Mhm. Love it. Do you want to share any other keys that you're feeling called to share?
Yeah. Yeah, so the book's kind of divided into two parts. And the first one, when I was kind of talking about the first four keys, are really about just sort of understanding living in a consciousness infused universe, right? So the first thing I want to get through in the first part of the book is that we have to shift our sort of way of looking at the world to being a material world to be a world of consciousness. And if you look at everything as being alive, even in some degree, like inert things like rocks in their own way have their own life force, because everything again is not matter, right? It comes down to that energy. So really making that shift in the first part of the book to living in a consciousness infused universe and understanding the potential of living in a consciousness infused universe. And then the second part of the book is where we really go into actually developing your intuition and your ability to interact with it in more meaningful, more powerful ways, right? So first you have to kind of understand the landscape, get to know, what's out there. And, like you, I've had a lot of experiences with, multidimensional experiences of all kinds. So it's really drawing for me on a lifelong journey of experiences, and also the experiences of scientists and people who've actually studied this stuff from a scientific point of view too. So it's a pretty nice description and summary, I think, of the world in terms of the deep dimension. But then the second part of the book, when we start to do more actual workshops and exploration, we start focusing on things like soulmates, synchronicity, telepathy, all of these magical supernatural things that were not supposed to exist, but that some of us have experienced them at least a few times in our life. We've had those moments of like, wow, that was odd, or was that just a coincidence, right? And in reality, it isn't a coincidence. It's really just a part of our interconnectedness that we're witnessing. So, we talk about impossible things and why they're not impossible anymore. And we do some practices there's a remote viewing practice in there if you want to try it. We also do some sacred seeing. So sacred seeing is something that I love to talk about. And that's key number 5, which intuition is my universal language. So I think this is a really important concept, especially, and I think you're a great person to attest to that, right? When you're channeling, when you're working with any sort of in interdimensional life, what is the one language that everyone shares? It's intuition, right? It's not like nobody speaks English or speaks Spanish, right? We all speak intuition, right? We just know it. We can just share that data on a level that rises above language. So one of the tools I use to help people to develop that language is the sacred seeing process, which is, it's similar to the idea of tarot cards. So I created a whole card deck called Insight Cards, which you can play with on my website for free at kimchestney.com. I have a whole interactive deck. And the idea comes from a very old tradition in religious ancient texts of sacred seeing, where seers would look at images and receive divine guidance from these images, right? So it's very similar to the card practices that we've created today, only these cards, they're just a variety of different images, of all kinds of beautiful images, nothing scary. You're not going to get anybody like dead with 12 arrows in their back, right? It's not like that. That's the thing about the tarot. It's like, like those cards are just a little much, right? So these are all really beautiful, pleasant images, but they all tell a story. And your intuition, because it speaks this other language, often a visual language, a symbolic language, sort of with the other side of our brain here. So you look at a card and you just allow that card to visually speak to you. And it's amazing what happens. You set your intention on something that you want some guidance for, and you look at this card, and all of a sudden the card starts speaking to you and telling you a story and giving you information. And you can have, like, I'll have a class of 40 people and I'll put the same card up for everybody. And that story will be different for every person, right? So there's no intrinsic meaning in anything you look at. It's how your intuitive mind uses that information to tell you a story and bring you guidance. It's called Visio Divina, is what it was called in the old days. And but now we can use this practice on a daily basis. Anytime that we want to really start that conversation with that deeper part of ourselves, the higher part of ourselves, and train that part of our mind to start bringing in guidance and information on a regular basis.
Sounds amazing. And I love what you said too about the connection between intuition and telepathy. Do you feel like they are inherently connected? And do you also feel like in the future we'll be speaking more of the language that you were talking about, which is intuition, or even just like you said, like the energy speaks, right? Energy speaks louder than words. So
Absolutely.
how do you see the future and telepathy and intuition?
Yeah, I think that telepathy is our original language. I think it's something that as we created written language, spoken language, that other language began to atrophy. So I think in terms of this sort of expansion, this intuitive part of our brain that we're starting to develop, the more that we start to do this, the more we're going to start living insightfully with this sort of intuitive intelligence. It happens in bits and pieces now. So if you look at our lives in terms of where we are with our intuition, we're all pretty much like children. We can like make it work here and there. If we're lucky, we can kind of start to just live by it in little bits and pieces and get the feeling of our gut feelings and stuff. But there is so much potential. This is just the beginning. Right now, we're just getting evidence that it's real and that it works, and we're beginning to trust it. But once we start to really lean into that and live by it, let me tell you, the more you trust it, the more you live by it, the stronger it gets, the more magic comes in, the more your mind expands, the more you understand the world in a completely different way, right? So that's how our intuition is taking us down this road. And if the more of us that follow it and keep pushing through that inner frontier to the next place, to the next new discovery, the more that this is going to become a way of life. And eventually we might not even need to talk or to say words. We just experience it from time to time with people we know, like we're just on the same wavelength with someone, right? You might just get each other, but eventually that's going to turn into something much more deep and connected. But there's a caveat to this, because it's never going to happen while we are feeling like we're in conflict, while our egos are in conflict, while we have things to hide from each other, while we're still in that place of self-inflicted separation. And that's really where we are today, right? And that's one of the things, like the government, like, oh, we can't have people remote viewing because they're secrets. We have to keep our secrets. What does a world without secrets look like, right? So that's the bigger question we have to ask ourselves. How do we live with full transparency, with full authenticity, with nothing to hide, right? Because that's where intuition, when we have telepathy, like that's where it's starting to take us. We have to break down those walls and be able to be 100% authentic.
Yeah, I really love what you said about intuition being like our first language, because today in the world we have so many different languages, and even if I don't speak the same language as you, and funnily enough, just yesterday I had a group session and a channeling session. One of the questions was about language, and they were saying something like you said, that language is a set of codes that help us to understand each other, but really we can say a lot of things but mean different things. So your intention and your frequency as you speak things is really more important than what you are saying, right? So you can say, I love you, or I'm sorry, but mean different things. And the other
Mhm.
person can feel that. So I really think that in the future, like you said, when we have nothing to hide and we're completely honest and authentic, we will need less and less of these codes, right? Because energy will speak first, your heart will speak first. And I do, as you were talking about this, nothing to hide story, it feels to me like, yes, the ego, and not, I don't want to make the ego the villain, but it feels like everybody has got their ego in front of their potential, right? And the ego is like protecting us, but really just blocking that
Yes.
potential to unlock our intuition.
Absolutely. No, I think that's totally true. And it's that sort of double-edged sword. Is it protecting us or is it blocking us? Right. The security is that double-edged sword of, is it holding us back or is it protecting us? And that's sort of the spot that we've gotten to with ego a lot at this point in time. And I think that when you get into the afterlife, the next life situation, when you hear the stories, I think we lead a lot more. You can see it with our intuition. We speak with our hearts. We speak with energy. We speak without words, right? So I think it's all a byproduct of living in this reality, this sort of quote unquote, we want to call it a simulation, we want to call it Maya, whatever this three-dimensional ones and zeros world of duality is that we live in, this sort of opportunity to withhold and to have our own space creates this environment of friction. And eventually, our intuition can rise above it, but we're gonna have to make some changes first.
Yes. And do you think intuition is important as we're preparing ourselves to explore and potentially meet interdimensional life, extraterrestrial, call it what you want? Do you think that we're in that process of preparation to have that kind of exploration or contact? How far do you think we are from that?
Yeah, I think it's already happening. I think that, if you talk with people like Whitley Strieber, people who are really have had very intense experiences with interdimensional life, one of the commonalities is telepathic intuitive communication, even to the point of people will see something, a ship in a distance, and it's responding to their thoughts, right? So that's one of the things that always really struck me, and I've heard those testimonies time and time again, that it's a conscious relationship with an object that is huge and is inconceivable to really understand. That why do I have a conscious relationship with something, right? Because the common language is intuition. It's the way that we can connect with loved ones who have passed over, because they're not gone, they're just in a different form. It's how we can communicate with life of any kind, whether it's life, interdimensional life, whether it's life from another planet. There's all sort of different varieties of life. We live in a world of a myriad, billions and gajillions of different types of life. And we're just one little piece. So the connection with it all is intuitive. And I think that the more that we're open to that intuition, trust it, when we have those experiences, we can recognize it better and understand it and be more prepared for it.
Amazing. 100% agree. And I can talk to you for a whole day, but
Yes.
and I just want to wrap up. I usually wrap up with a final round of what I call fun and deep questions. So I'll just ask a few questions, and you're the master of intuition. Whatever
Yeah,
comes up first in your intuition, you can just
I
say.
love it. I love it. Fun and deep. Love them both. Let's do it.
So, Kim, what is your definition of intuition?
So, all All right, I'll just say the simple answer is that I'll just say what Paramahansa Yogananda said. Intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. It's our connection to the divine, the everythingness, the core of the universe, and who we really are.
Amazing. I know we talk about it all the
I would go on
time.
forever with that question.
Great way to kind of wrap it up, and
The simple terms.
love that. What brings you joy?
I think I think overall, the simple answer to that is I derive joy from doing things that expand my soul's growth and put me in alignment with my intuitive path and the unfolding of my highest truth.
Beautiful.
Was I probably supposed to list things like painting?
That was perfect.
Yeah.
So imagine, hypothetical question, imagine that all of the books in the world were going to be destroyed and deleted forever, and then you can save one book. Which one would you save? You can save yours too if you want.
No, I would not. I would definitely not. Because I would need something to. Oh, this is a tough one because I think it might be. It might be. It's one of Paramahansa Yogananda's books. I'd have to say. I'd say Autobiography of a Yogi, but I think The Journey to Self-Realization would probably be the one. I think that's really the most astute sort of explanation of what we're all doing here on this planet and how it's all so beautifully founded in our intuitive discovery.
I like that. It's like you're leaving a little guide for humans.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the one book everyone should read, every human.
Amazing. What is the one thing that people might be surprised to know about you?
One thing they might be surprised to know that I was a ballerina. How about that? Yeah, I was a professional. I was actually trained to be a professional ballerina at a young age because I intuitively love music and dancing and all of that stuff. Another wonderful way to commune with our intuition through dance.
Yeah, to move energy and express
Yes.
that energy. Amazing.
Yes.
Suppose that we sign contracts before coming to this life, and then we choose what we came here to learn and also what we came here to teach. What do you think you came here to learn and to teach in this lifetime as Kim?
Well, according to my students who I've done multiple past life masterminds on me. So I've been doing this for 7 years. So I've had like 7 different students describe this one particular life that was very much entangled with this. And it seems to me that my lesson is a recurring one, which is to really bring the feminine energies of intuition and the teachings that have been repressed throughout, recent centuries in history, to bring them into the light and to stand for them and to not be afraid and to really live my truth and help other people to really live their truth in this era of the rise of intuition and the feminine and quantum. I think all of it is tied together.
Amazing. And we thank you for your work because it's much needed in this time. And the last question is called Three Truths. And I borrowed it from Lewis Howes. And it's also a hypothetical scenario. So imagine that many years from now, you're about to make the transition from this life into another life. And all of your books, all of your podcasts, all of your IntuitionLab projects, they've been deleted, and you have a piece of paper in your hands, a pen, and you can write 3 truths, and these 3 truths will live on, and so your family and humanity will read them and be inspired by them. what would be your three truths?
Yeah, the first thing I would say was to trust yourself over the world. Follow yourself, not the world. We've been conditioned to listen to other people to define our reality when our own, we know what we're capable of, what we're meant for, and the truth of our being. So follow ourselves, not the world. The second one I would say is love. I would say love is so much more than just falling in love with a partner and getting married. Love is a state of being. Loving kindness is a way to be, and don't let the world harden you and tell you to resort to all of these self-defense mechanisms, but to keep your heart alive. It's like that quote from The Breakfast Club when Ali Sheedy says, "When you grow up, your heart dies." And that's really the truth of what happens in our world so often, because life just beats that love out of us, and we lose that sense of self and self-love. So it's whether it's love for ourselves, love for other people, love for existence. Keep your heart alive and don't let anybody break it, because it's the most valuable thing to have that light and love in our heart. And I think that leads me to the last one, which is stay young at heart and look for the magic, look for the wonder. Don't get caught up in the world telling you that all this dogma and this is how it should be and defining everything for you. Just go out and experience life in this beautiful planet that we live on, because right now we live in one of the most amazing times you could live in history. You know, we have comforts like you couldn't understand. Even the food we can eat is amazing. No one in the past has ever been able to eat food like we've been able to eat food on this earth, and to travel and see the whole planet. We have so much to do on this wonderful planet right now at this moment in time. So take advantage of the peace that we have and the opportunity, and just enjoy being alive.
Yeah, yeah. Break the paradigm, but also be the new paradigm. Right?
Yes.
Love that. Tell us how people can connect with you. What's the best way to connect with you? And if you want to share other than your book, again, that's coming out. It will be out already by the time this video is published. How can people get it? And if there's any projects in the pipeline that you want to share.
Yeah, so you can connect with me at my website, kimchestney.com, Chestney with a T, or at intuition-lab.com. That's my school. That's where you can practice. I have all kinds of online workshops. You can practice your intuition live, develop with me, take courses. I also have that free interactive card deck on my website. Both sites have that, so you're welcome to use that anytime. And download my free Intuition Awakening Guide. It's a 12-page ebook, and it's a great way to start, just to get your, sort of your wheels turning with your intuition, understanding what your intuitive type is, how your unique intuition works, and really starting to open space for it in your life. So there's so much to do. There's so many ways to sort of start bringing intuition into your life. It's just the little small things that matter. So if you check out any of those websites, I have lots of free stuff and juicy, fun intuition practices that you can start to do right now to experience all of this excitement and magic yourself.
Amazing. And all of your books are available in
Everywhere.
Amazon.
Your favorite bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, anywhere online. Some indie bookstores in real life as well. So depending on where you live.
Amazing. So I'll put all the links in the description for anybody who's watching or listening. Check out the description. You'll find the links. And Kim, I just want to acknowledge you for your commitment to help humans to evolve and expand their realities, and also acknowledge you for your ability to translate such complex topics into digestive, easy ways to understand for our linear, sometimes limited human mind. And so I want to thank you for your work and for your being, and thank you for shining your light in the world. We need that light. We need more light workers like you. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. This has been such a fun conversation, and I love all the work you're doing. And it's such a pleasure to be with other people who are bringing this light into the world.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Much love. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode. If you would like to learn more about Kim's work, visit her website, www.kimchestney.com or www.intuition-lab.com. You can follow her on Instagram as well at Kim Chestney. As usual, you can find all the links in the show's notes. And once again, if you enjoyed this conversation, if it's brought you value, please subscribe to my podcast or my channel and share this episode with your friends who you think might benefit from this episode too. As always, keep shining your light, keep your heart open, and let love lead the way. I love you. See you in the next episode. Bye.